going on, everyone? True Techno Gamer back here. Thank you for watching and checking out the videos on the channel. Please like, subscribe if you haven't done so already. And we're just gonna have a good time now, man. I think this is a cool topic. I'm relaxing down here, and let's just get into it. I just recently was thinking about, again, the kind of point of this channel, journey to Endgame. A lot of people, well, what does Endgame really mean? Endgame doesn't really exist, all those kind of things. And it really just got me thinking, what does the ultimate system really look like, right? Like in terms of home theater or audio, what does the ultimate system look like, right? Now, most people know, if you are dabble into this hobby at all, there are so many options everywhere. Speakers, amplifiers, preamps, DACs, televisions, whatever, right? There's so many options, all kinds of price ranges, whatever. It's overwhelming. And it's like, well, when does it end? Like, what is the ultimate? I've talked about this a lot on my channel. Use case really matters. And what I found in my, 20 years or more than 20 years dabbling in this space is that there are so many options. So to really narrow it down, you got to really figure out what it is that you want, but also what is your use case, all right? And by that, I mean, what are you trying to do with your system? Are you sitting down just watching cable TV? Are you really sitting down to listen to 2-channel music, to relax and kind of really focus in on the music? Are you just wanting your system to be playing music in the background while you're cleaning or cooking or doing other stuff? Do you want to sit down and watch a lot of movies? Do you have, you want to get a movie theater type of immersive feel, light controlled and stuff like that? What are you trying to do, right? And fundamentally, music and movies wind up having two very, very different paths to Endgame, two very different looks for an ultimate system, right? And what I want to talk about is, I'm gonna give you a couple of examples, I think, of what that could look like. I'm gonna call some people out in a good way that are fellow YouTubers and have some really cool systems that I want to just use as a reference and as an example. And then I want to bring it back to my system and like what my goals were and why I made some different choices for both of those paths, right? Like, and I talked about that before, but I'll kind of bring it home in summary form. So let's dig into this right now. On one case, again, I want to call out some people. So shout out to Youthman. Now, Youthman, a lot of you people that's probably watching this channel, if you came across this video, you probably heard of Youthman. He's a really, really big YouTuber and influencer when it comes to home theater and home theater spaces. He's been at this for a long time. I don't know Youthman. I've never met him directly. He is a subscriber to my channel though, so hopefully he does actually see this video. And again, I'm just giving a shout out here right now. I'm calling out Youthman because Youthman has a really, really good kick-ass home theater system. He has a dedicated home theater system. I actually was inspired, to kind of create this video because recently he did a video on his channel where one of his subscribers came to his house and he kind of just, gave the person demos and they kind of just talked about his impressions. I always think those are really cool. And in doing that, Youthman talked about a lot of his decisions and, what was so great about his system. The person was super, super impressed, blew him away. And he's someone that already has a home theater as well, like I do. But Youthman's was on another level, was dedicated, built up over years. And, Youthman has JTR, a JTR Noesis speaker system all around, right? He has a 7.2.4, I believe, similar to me. But he has JTR speakers that are just huge and they create this really, really big sound. And the word that his subscriber used was big sound, and he said it felt like he was in the movies, right? Now, Youthman's room is not that big though, right? Like his room is way smaller than mine. But big speakers with just really big sound that are super, super dynamic, that can play really loud. All of those qualities are great qualities for home theater. Great qualities for home theater, right? So when you look and listen to Youthman's system, I could imagine if I ever had a chance to really hear it, I'm sure I would be blown away, even coming from my system, because again, it's a tighter space. He has great acoustic, control in there and is really dialed in, like the person was saying. And the effect is that you're just in the movie, right? And you just have sound like all around you. It's really hard for me to get that kind of experience here in my room. I can play louder than I ever would need to. The sound will be there, but the space in my space is so big and so open. There's an opening and to another room there. I got this stairway. It's not like a really enclosed type space like Youthman has, and like a lot of dedicated home theaters are. So again, my room isn't a dedicated home theater in that traditional sense. So what he's created is absolutely, I would say, an in-game system with in-game, equipment for home theater. Okay. Now on the other side of the spectrum, I'm gonna shout out to my man Jay's Audio Lab. I've never met Jay. I actually have seen him a couple of times at various shows, Exponia and stuff like that. And CAF, he also visited CAF. I never had a chance to meet him. I feel like every time I seen him, he was doing something else, right? Right? Or he was kind of out of reach. But I'll Jay, if you happen to ever see this, remember this, and next time, whether there's whatever event, I'll definitely make a point to, to speak to you. But anyway, I do follow his channel, and his channel is awesome because Jay is taking a whole different approach. Jay is investing in the absolute ultra high end pinnacle 2-channel music type systems, right? I mean, and he's doing it like where, for his YouTube channel as a primary goal. Like he's not even getting equipment and just enjoying it in his house. He's buying equipment. He'll keep it for a few months, and he'll, make a bunch of content on YouTube, share the equipment, share the system, and then he'll sell it. What he has right now is not necessarily what he had 3 months ago, what he had a year ago, that kind of thing. But it's cool because he's investing and showing off equipment that, are so exclusive and so rare and so expensive and so, luxury that you almost will never find them. And that's the whole point of his channel, right? And then we get it. Like, he's showing off stuff, names you probably never heard of. You would have to go to like a really high-end Munich, high-end Exponia type of events to see any of these equipment. Never mind see an owner with this stuff in their home. So that part is cool, but it's interesting to see. Jay's stuff is absolute pinnacle for like this 2-channel music listening, right? And it's, his system is like $1 million, literally about $1 million or probably over now. Seriously, he has $300,000 speakers in his home right now. He has like $100,000 plus amplifier, $100,000 plus preamps, and he is literally like over $1 million, right? But it's interesting to see that that's an example of a pinnacle system, but it is so different than what like Youthman has for his home theater. So different, right? Where they landed is night and day, but I'm pretty sure that if I were to listen to both of their systems, I would be equally, if not, like really, really blown away from each of them. But they're so different, right? So it just got me thinking, right? Like, it's an interesting thing to talk about. Like, how do you get there, right? And again, what is your goal? So to really break this down, I want to just focus on the speakers, because doing an apples to apples kind of comparison here. Again, very different rooms. I'll show some screens. Their rooms look very different. Youthman is both of them are relatively small spaces, but I've never seen Youthman talk about listening to music in 2-channel. His room is not designed for that. His equipment isn't set up for that, right? That room is lights out. He has a big, I think, 150-inch projector screen or something like that. Huge projector screen. He got the speakers behind the screen, kind of built into the wall, so they're not visible at all. And that's important because I have talked a lot about how important aesthetics are for me in my system and in this room. Because I come down here and people come there and they're going to see everything out here. Subwoofers, speakers, everything. So aesthetics are huge for me. But for Youthman case, they really wouldn't be, right? If that's what you wanted to do, no one's going to see your system. The only speakers that are visible are the ones that are on the wall, which are like the surrounds and his Atmos and stuff like that. But just a different purpose. Jay has $300,000 premier Swedish. Now he has the Marten, speakers in his room. These things are $300,000. They're taller than me, right? I'm roughly 6 feet. They're taller than that. They are beautiful looking. Diamond drivers, gloss everywhere. Real wood, real wood veneer. Like, they are furniture, luxury furniture pieces, because they're designed for a space where they're going to be the showpiece. People are going to see them, and they really need to make a statement. And that's something that you typically don't see as much with home theater, right? Like it's the different purpose, right? So let's dig in a little bit on, I'm going to look at the speakers that each of them has and look at some of the specs. And I'm going to highlight to you how different some of the specs are and why they're different, right? Because again, the use case is so much different, right? So let's start by looking at Youthman system. He has the Noesis 212 HDR, what's called 212 HDR. And you look at it, it's a black box, right? It's a huge black box. But when you look at the design, it's kind of plain, right? I mean, compare this to the actual look of the cabinet and just the overall aesthetics of even my speakers, the Paradigm Persona, or the speakers, the Martins that Jay has, which I'll show in a minute. But besides that, what you see are two big cones, right? Two big woofers. They're actually two 12-inch woofers. That's a subwoofer size, right? I mean, subs usually start at 8 inches, 10 inches. 12 inches is kind of a good midpoint. A large subwoofer nowadays is about 15, 16 inches, and then some of them go to 18, and very few go beyond that. 12 inches is a sub, and these things got two 12-inch woofers, and then you see that big open square that kind of looks like a horn. That's exactly what it is. The tweeter in the mid-range is connected to a horn, something that Klipsch kind of made very, very famous and popular within the audio industry. And what a horn is it takes the sound from the tweeter, in this case tweeter in mid-range, and it projects it out, right? All in all directions, pretty much outwardly, and it just creates a huge wall of sound from even a tweeter, which is the smallest, driver, right, in a speaker system. So that's where you're going to get that really large sound. Every sound effect, a bullet, a gunshot, an impact from a car, an explosion, is going to it might, even if it is a small sound in space, a horn is going to just project it out super, super wide. And with a room like Youthman, again, doesn't have a huge room. So he has 3 of these, right, for his left, center, and right, all identical, but 3 of them in his front stage. So they have 3 of these 12-inch woofers, and this huge horn is going to, no wonder, it's going to create a really, really, really large sound, right? Now let's look at some of the specs here, though, right? I want to point out something. Considering how big the speaker is, you guys notice how limited the frequency response is, right? You saw me talk about the Paradigm Personas, their frequency response. I mean, look at specifically the low end. These are rated to only go down to 60 hertz, right? Like, most general purpose speakers, I'll say, you're going to see them go down to 40, 30 for the really high end stuff, in the 20s. Again, my Persona 7Fs are rated to go down easily to about 24, 22 hertz if you do plus or minus 3 dB. About 22 hertz. Which is almost full range. Remember, 20 hertz is like considered the minimum range for human hearing, right? Anything below 20 is more just felt energy from bass, but you're not really going to hear it. On the upper end, 20 kilohertz is the upper range of human hearing, right? So, if a speaker is around 20, you're like, okay, well, you're doing generally full range. But if you want to really get the accuracy and detail and precision, you want the speaker cones drivers to be stable, really, really stable throughout that entire 20 to 20 kilohertz range, right? So to do that, a lot of, especially like the audiophile level speakers, you'll see that they'll push way past 20 on the upper end because they're using technologies and drivers and, all of this build quality stuff to make sure that those things are definitely going to be stable within the audible range of human hearing up to 20 kilohertz, because this driver doesn't break up until you get to 40 kilohertz. 50 kilohertz, right, and beyond. But what you see here with the JTR is it's a fairly limited frequency range, right? Like, I've seen speakers that have 7-inch, 6.5-inch drivers in them for their woofers, and they're rated to go down to 40, at least like 45, hertz. These are only down to 60. Why is that? With two 12-inch woofers, right? I'll get into that. Look at the sensitivity, though, before we go into there. 101 dB. 101 dB. Now, to put this in perspective, guys, what this number is saying is, with 1 watt of energy, 1 watt, everyone talks about 100 watts, 1,000 watts. It doesn't take a lot of wattage to actually produce a really, really loud sound. With 1 watt of energy from a distance, I think, of like just a few feet or 1 foot away, I think, in front of the speaker, you're getting 101 decibels, man. That is like concert level, like, ear bleeding level sound from 1 watt within, just a foot a distance. That's a loud speaker. What that means, that's what that's showing. So now you put an amplifier on your speaker, you're going to be giving it more than 1 watt. So what that number essentially says is how easy is it to play the speakers loudly. And to put that number in perspective, a good speaker that's considered to be pretty sensitive is going to be able to do about 90 dB is considered pretty efficient, pretty loud, right? And remember, if you guys don't know, every 3 dB requires twice the amount of amplifier power to generate, right? So what that means is if you wanted to go from 90 dB to 93 dB, you need twice the amount of amplifier power, right? So if you can use an amplifier that has 30 watts of power that can give you 90 dB, you're gonna need 60 watts to get 3 dB more, right? So just keep that in mind, okay? So when you see a number like, if I talk about going from 90 dB to 101, that's 11 dB. That may not sound like a lot, but that is huge. That's a big, big difference, requiring a ton less power, amplifier power to get loud volume, right? So 90 dB is generally good. My Paradigm Persona 7Fs are 92 dB, which again, pretty good. Now you'll see on the other side for like those really high-end audiophile, 2-channel focus speakers, a lot of them are going to be well below 90. They're going to be 88, 86, 84 dB. And what that means is they're going to require a lot of amplifier power for you to really play them loud, because they're designed more for delicacy, more for accuracy, not for loud, not for rocking out. Then, right? Those kind of speakers aren't designed for that. But for home theater, you do want speakers that can rock out. You want speakers that can tear the house down, so to speak, right? That's when you get that visceral experience from the car chase, from the T-Rex, stomping. Like that's what you want for home theater. Home theater is not about getting the most delicate details, getting the most accurate, pinpointly accurate sound. You're not trying to accurately reproduce real live instruments and stuff like that. You're not doing that. You just want to deliver a big, dynamic, loud, visceral experience. So that's why you see these kind of specs that really look very different than what you might find on a musical focused system or speaker, right? You're going to see it doesn't need to go down below 60 hertz, because in a home theater system, you're almost always going to have a subwoofer. You're not going to have a home theater system without a subwoofer. And the subwoofer is going to be able to play below 60 much better than any regular speaker can, right? That's the idea. So we don't have to worry about that. We focus those 12-inch woofers on playing, above that and playing throughout the mid-range to give you, again, a bigger, more impactful sound in where most of the sound comes from, the mid-range, right? In this case, right? And again, you got that huge horn that barely goes above 20, but again, for movies, that's fine, right? In the real world, birds chirping and cars jamming, they're not like, musical instruments you need to reproduce. You don't need a home theater focused speaker to be playing to 40, 50, 60 kilohertz, right? Why? Right? There's no sound there. And again, it costs more investment, more engineering, more R&D to build. It's more work to build a speaker that can play that wide, right? Which is why a lot of music, audiophile type speakers are way more expensive than most home theater speakers, right? Now keep in mind, these aren't cheap speakers, right? These speakers, as you see, MSRP is about $8,000. Now, well, you can get them directly from the manufacturer. It says for $4,000 each. That's not cheap, but it's not $300,000 like what Jay has in his system, right? It's not $27,000 and with $40,000 almost for what the Persona line Mac tops out at, right? Like it's $4,000. Right, and it's it's an Endgame home theater speaker. It's one of the best home theater speakers you could possibly get in your home today, right? That's why, right? It's a lot more engineering work to do that, right? And then you look here, the usable output 134 dB. Again, that's That's insane. You would never see that on a general purpose or music speaker. I mean, you might be topping out at around 120 dB. 134 is just crazy, right? Let's just put it out there. 2,000 watts of power. I mean, they're designed to just take a lot of power, like, you know, and you know, these are big physical speakers, 125 pounds. They're pretty heavy, right? They're pretty big. Okay. It's some interesting things to note there. Okay. Now I want to compare that to what Jay has for his music system. Right now, let's go over there. Now, Jay has, like I said, he has these are crazy, crazy speakers. They're so beautiful. These are the Marten Orchestra. And I think he has like a special edition version of it too. But these are what's called the Marten Mingus Orchestra speakers, okay? And immediately, just look at them, okay? They have a lot more drivers. The drivers are smaller. The overall speaker cabinet itself is smaller, right? It looks more like a statement. You see it's gloss. You see the chrome on the front. The cleanness of the drivers, right? There's no big horns on here. There are even drivers in the back. So there's like 4 woofers in the front and then like 4 woofers in the back. These things use diamond, which is extremely rare. But these things use diamond for the tweeter, and they have 2 diamond drivers. They have a diamond tweeter, and then they have a diamond for the what they call the upper mid range. Right, so I mean, this is where this thing is $300,000. You know these things are $300,000. First of all, when you just look at them, just look at the look compared to what you saw, right, with the JTR speaker. Right, again, these are meant to be a visible showpiece in a room, right? So every detail, every curve, it just looks so much more refined. There's a lot of time and effort. Speakers of this quality, a lot of times they may take 3, 4, 5 weeks, 6 weeks to just build one, layers and layers of, you know, paint and, you know, the wood, the machinery. Like they go to town with just construction of the cabinet and making it look right. I went into this with the Paradigm Persona line too, right? Paradigm did a lot of work, layers and layers and layers of the wood and the paint to make everything look, you know, so high quality. These obviously go way beyond even that, and also way beyond what the GTR is. So a lot of that cost is just in the cost of building the speaker of this level, okay? But then, yeah, you look at the diamond drivers, ceramic for the mid-range, and the woofers are also, I think they're made of aluminum or ceramic as well. I mean, so whole nother level, right? But when we look at the specifications, man, this is where it gets interesting. I want you to look at these specifications, right? So yeah, aluminum for the woofers, four aluminum drivers there. And they have 4 10-inch passive aluminum woofers in the back as well. A pure ceramic mid-range, and then again 2 diamond, basically tweeters and upper tweeters. Crazy expensive, highest quality materials you can get for a driver. But look at the specs here, guys. The JTR, I remember, went down to 60 hertz and went up to 24 kilohertz. Okay. The human hearing range is 20 to 20 kilohertz. Look at the frequency response of this speaker, man. The speaker goes down to 22 hertz, which is basically, right, I mean, basically 20 hertz. 22 hertz, and all the way up to 100,000 hertz, which means 100 kilohertz. So the human hearing is maxed out at about 20 kilohertz. And we saw the GTR only went up to about 24. Okay, 24. These things go up to 100. Like I said before, why would they do that? This speaker is designed to give you the most accurate, realistic sound humanly possible, right? So they want to make sure that the driver is completely stable within that human audible range. So to do that, they use a material like diamond, that's the stiffest material on the planet, that can be used for a speaker cone, right? They use that because diamond is not going to break up until 100 kilohertz, which means that at 20 kilohertz, at 10 kilohertz, it is completely rigid, it's completely stable. That's the point. Beryllium is arguably the second best material, which is what, you know, the Persona has that I have. And Paradigm rates the Persona to go up to about 40, 45 kilohertz. You know, 50 kilohertz if you go plus or minus 3 dB. That's still way beyond the human hearing, right? Like it's right, more than double the range, right? Going up to 20 kilohertz, and now you're more than doubling that. So that's great. You're going to be really stable, right, up in that range. But Diamond takes it that much further. Is it necessary? No, probably not, right? That's the kind of indulgence we do at this range, but at this level, right? But that's what they do. So the frequency range here is just way beyond that JTR is what I'm saying, because for 2-channel, listen to the name. 2-channel implies there isn't a subwoofer, there isn't surrounds and Atmos, and these 2 speakers have to play everything. Every instrument, every sound that needs to come out is only coming out from these 2 speakers for the entire range. So that's why they have to be engineered and designed to do so. Whereas JTR has the luxury when they're designing like those JTR Noesis. They have the luxury to say, we know that these are going to be placed in an environment where there's going to be other speakers around to fill in the gaps. Subwoofers, surrounds, right? Whatever, right? So that's another fundamental difference there. Remember the power rating on those JTRs? What did they say? Remember? 2,000 watts. Remember that? These say 450 watts, right? Because they're not designed to play extremely loud and scare you. And, that's not what they're about when you're playing back fine instruments and music, right? Way lower power rating. Remember what I said about sensitivity? So these are not bad, but look, 89 dB. Those GTRs had a sensitivity of 101 dB. That's a 12 dB difference. Now, if you do the math, how much more amplifier power would you need to play these speakers at the same level as your JTRs? It's a 12 dB difference. And like I said, every 3 dB requires double the amplifier power. So it's a logarithmic function, right? So you have to do power. So 3 dB is 2 to the 1. Another 3 dB now is 2 squared. Another 2 dB now is 2 to the 3rd. So it really goes 2, 4, 8, right? So, gosh, man, when you do this, you're talking about basically 2 to the 4, right? So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So roughly, you do the math, we're talking about you need 16 times the amount of amplifier power to play these speakers at the same volume level as the JTRs. That's literally mathematically what that means. Okay? Again, fortunately, when we listen to stuff, we're not listening at hundreds of watts and thousands of watts, right? So it's kind of thinking about going from, let's say, maybe something at 10 watts on the JTR can give you the same amount of volume, in theory, right? Can give you the same amount of volume that 10 times 16, so 160 watts would give you for these speakers. So 160 watts on these things is 10 watts on the JTR, roughly. That's what this difference looks like, right? And again, for music, that's why you see Jay has these, I think he still has the Griffin Apex. Those things are like 1,000 watts per channel, right? Pure Class A, the highest like quality amplification that you can get, right? Highest quality power, 1,000 watts. Whereas, Youthman recently did an experiment. I saw that as well with Youthman. He did an experiment where he hooked up his whole system, all 11 speakers, to a Marantz AVR, or a Marantz receiver. And he was struggling. Him and another, subscriber of his, they literally were struggling to hear the difference. Because previously he had it hooked up with an AVM 90 Anthem, right? Which is, a killer processor, and I think a monolith, like 300 watts per channel, power amp, right? For, a really powerful amp. And now he has it in a receiver that's probably giving, most of those channels less than 100 watts. And he couldn't even tell the difference, right? Because it doesn't take anything to get those JTRs to sync. But for a speaker like this, you better come correct with your amplification. You need some powerful stuff, right? That's the idea. So very, very, very different thing here. And then also one thing I want to call out, man, look at the weight. So when you look at this speaker, this speaker is really tall. I don't know if that comes across in just obviously these images, but this speaker is really, really tall. But you can look at the shape. You see that the drivers are actually small. There's more of them, but it's smaller drivers, right? And the cabinet is thinner and all that kind of stuff compared to that GTR, which is like this huge rectangular big box. That GTR was 125 pounds. These speakers are 288 pounds each. So literally well over double the amount of weight and density, right? In terms of the construction. So when you look at the price difference, 4 grand versus 300 grand, like I said, a lot of that is just in the construction and building of that cabinet. They just do the utmost, right? And that weight indicates not only the weight of the actual cabinet, how many layers of wood and all that kind of stuff they were probably using, but also points to the weight of the driver, because the drivers, they use usually way more sophisticated magnets, spiders, motor systems on music focus, accuracy focused speakers like this, right? Because again, playing all these instruments, you want to convey these instruments and fool your brain into thinking that these are real life instruments, because instruments are real things that your mind has a reference to how a violin sounds, guitar sounds, piano sounds, etc. Right? So the goal is almost to fool your brain to saying, hey, these things are coming out of these speakers, but that guitar really is here in space. To do that requires just the utmost level of control. So a lot of that weight with the bigger magnets and bigger motor systems is just about having that rigidity and the strength to be able to control the speaker cone to a level that, again, you would never even dream of for home theater, right? Home theater, let that cone go, let it, flex out, right? And just do big sound. It doesn't have to be so controlled, it doesn't have to be so precise, but just big sound. Now, the reality is, when you have a big cone moving a lot, you're gonna get a lot more distortion. Fundamentally, this is physics. You get a bigger cone moving a lot, right? Compared to like a tweeter that's moving a little bit, you're gonna get a lot more distortion. There's a lot more room for error and room for distortion with that other speaker. And generally speaking, that's what happens if you look at the design and you would have measured a JTR speaker compared to something like this. Of course, this is extreme, but if you did, like to the Martens, the JTR is going to have way more distortion throughout, especially, at the edges, right? Like at the lower end. I mean, again, they only rated down to 60 because if you get below 60, they start distorting all over the place and their output goes way down. Same thing on the top end. Really, when you get close to 20, it's going to start losing. But for a movie, 90% of the sound is within that range. So you're good. For music, again, most of it is in that sound. There are some music instruments that actually play well beyond that. Humans can't hear it the same, right? But they do. But again, to maintain that level of accuracy, it just takes that level of construction, man. So 280, even my Persona 7Fs, and again, they're nowhere near $300,000 speaker. But even those, and that's not even the flagship, right? The 9Hs are the flagship. The 9Hs are almost 200 pounds. They're 196 pounds, I think. And the 7Fs are like 147 pounds, 145 pounds, close to 150 pounds. So even both of those are still way more, right? The cabinet and the overall design speakers are denser than that JTR. Not that the JTR 125 pounds is not light, but I'm just saying, considering the weight, the size of those drivers, dual 12-inch drivers, my Persona 7Fs are dual 8-inch drivers, right? So, like, how is it that, it's still 30 pounds heavier, roughly, right? I mean, that goes into the construction of the cabinet and stuff like that, right? So, it's really interesting to look at this and break this down, right? Like, pinnacle systems on different fronts, very, very different speaker designs, very, very different levels of quality and focus points. Obviously, what they focus on for JTR focused on for home theater wouldn't cut it, right, for music, and what Marten focused in on for music wouldn't cut it for home theater, right? So, what does that mean, right? Like, what is the ultimate system? Is one more of an ultimate system than the other? I mean, the answer is no, right? I mean, this is the point of this whole hobby. This is the whole point of this audio thing. There is no one right or wrong standard, all right? There isn't one. Right? It just depends on your taste. It depends on your ears. It depends on your room, your space, which is the biggest part of it all, right? You could put the Martens in a horrible space, no room treatment. Both of these, Youthman and Jay in this case, have great room treatments all around their room, to really dial it in. You don't get to an ultimate place without having that for a room. But again, practically speaking, like I'm limited to how much I can put in this room and how much I really am willing to put in this room, I guess, because it does mess with the aesthetic in some cases, stuff like that. So there's always trade-offs there, and that's the reality, right? But neither one of them is more ultimate than the other. I'm pretty sure that if I went into Youthman system and heard it, JTR is going to be way less money technically than what Jay has, probably even less than what I have, honestly. But I would probably be overwhelmed with just how big and cinematic and how much of a movie theater it sounds like compared to my system in my space. Because again, I have an open space. I don't have nearly as much room treatments. Sound is bouncing around way more in my space than what he has going on. And then his speakers are going to fill in that space a lot more because they just deliver such a big sound, right? Contrary to that with Jay's, man, like those Martens, again, by the way, like again, when you say a musical speaker or a home theater speaker, of course, a speaker is a speaker. It can play sound. Jay can use the Martens to play home theater, of course. The JTRs will play music, technically fine, right? But, you know, again, for the trained ear, especially when you really get into the weeds of this stuff, it's about, you know, the focus areas to get to the optimal experience. The problem is that the optimal experience is very different from movies and home theater. That's what these companies understand, the best ones at least. You can't build a single speaker that's going to do both of those things perfectly, right? Because they're so different. And as you see, they require so much different design, right? So you just can't do that. And that's what you see. You see very, very different. You see those companies like a SVS now, Arundel, you know, they focus on home theater. Their bread and butter is in home theater. So they understand how to make speakers that are going to interact with other speakers in a system. Subwoofers, surrounds, centers, whatever, right? They're going to be connected to probably a receiver level, you know, so they're not going to have as much power, right? These kind of considerations. Whereas if you want to go all in on music, you're assuming that this speaker is everything. This speaker has to be able to produce everything. You don't assume subwoofer. You could do it, of course. You can add a subwoofer for a 2-channel system. That's where you get 2.1. People do it all the time. But by design, you're not assuming that. If you want to build the ultimate 2-channel speaker for music, you're going to make sure that it can play the full range of human hearing and well beyond that, right? Do it well and stably. It's a lot more time in the construction with those speakers. Those speakers are usually going to be visual showpieces in a space, in a room. They're going to be visible. They're not going to be hiding behind a screen. They're not going to be in some other room, right? They're going to be right front and center. You want to feel something by looking at them. That's what you get with the luxury class of speakers, right? That's what I get from my personas. Every time I come down in this room and I just sit and look at them, I want to listen to them. I want to engage with them. I want to get up close to them. I want to touch them. I want to hear them. Like I do. That's what you want to get. And that's me. Like I said, that I love the look of the persona. I still do. There are others. These Martens are ridiculous as well. There's plenty of other speakers I've seen that are beautiful. But that's the goal. It's a very different goal. And something would apply to like a subwoofer, right? Like some subs, like Youthman has the RS2, the JTR RS2s, huge subwoofers, arguably, you know, some of the biggest, loudest bass money can buy right now. They're just it's a huge plain box, right? Aesthetically, it's not very pleasing to me at all, right? If you don't care about aesthetics, like he doesn't, because he puts it behind a room or behind a screen, can't do much better than that. You really can't. There are, you know, other companies, audiophile companies that try to make subwoofers that cost $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, right? The RS2s are like $5,000 or something like that, around there. Why would you bother doing that? Well, again, a lot of their money that's going into that is about, again, crafting more accurate bass, not necessarily more loud bass, and about, again, constructing a cabinet. Like the rails, the cabinet is a lot of that work. The rail reference, $10,000 up. Look at that cabinet. It's different. It's a lot of craftsmanship that goes into that, right? So those are always the considerations, man. And, you know, for me, like I said, to bring it back home here, my system is meant to be a hybrid system. I do have a balance, but my balance leans more to home theater, truthfully. That's just where I spend more time. When you think about what I do in the space, I am probably watching TV, streaming something, a show or movie, watching like a Blu-ray movie, or playing my gaming. I'm doing at least 4 things that's kind of home theater focused, right? Where I have all of my speakers engaged is what I mean. And the last thing is listening to music, which I typically do with just 2 channels, usually 2.1 where I have my subs engaged, but sometimes 2.0, either way. But the other speakers are not on. So those are the 5 different things. Before the 5 are, again, home theater focused. So if I had to put a slant on it, I'm going to lean into home theater, which is why Paradigm, stands out so well to me, because that's a company that has done both, and they clearly historically has leaned more to home theater. But that's a good thing. They understand how to build a center speaker. They understand how to build a subwoofer. They understand. They will have Anthem as their sister company. That understands how to work with electronics and processors and amplifiers. They build everything. Paradigm knows the entire system. Not a lot of companies can say that. Not a lot of companies do that, right? And again, that's not a bad thing. If you only care about 2-channel, you wouldn't want that. And I have some people that would like Paradigm. Like, you go to their website, they're talking home theater. Like, they're not a serious speaker. Come on, right? They know how to make a speaker, and they know how to do music, right? They just kind of relegated to their top end lines. It used to be the signature line, now it's the persona line, and who knows what it will be later. But these speakers, you can sit down. I can sit down and play 2-channel music and still get a sublime experience when you put it all together. Put in the speaker cables, the room dynamics, the room acoustics, the processor, the DAC, blah, blah, blah. Put it all together. These things can sing with a lot of, almost like all of the best of them, I would say, in different ways. But put on a movie, connect them to, again, a home theater environment. I got an Anthem processor, I got Persona Center, I got other Paradigm surrounds, and they can still do that equally well, right? So, like I said before, they're not necessarily a 10 out of 10 in each one of those, music and home theater, but they're a 9 in both, right? Like that's how I feel about them. Like, they're a 9 in both. To me, they are as close as I can get to the optimal experience for both of those use cases in this space, in my space, and how I want it, that I can get, that money can buy. That's what I feel. Would I look at a speaker like the Martens that are $300,000 and say that they sound bad or look bad? They look amazing. Obviously, I've never heard those exact ones. I've heard other Marten speakers that are cheaper and they sounded amazing. So I'm sure, again, I would be blown away if I ever heard Jay's system, right? But I would never consider that. Besides the fact that I would never could afford, or even if I could afford, I just couldn't justify paying that much for loudspeakers. There's a lot of things about that speaker that just wouldn't necessarily work for me, right? Like, again, I have a hybrid system. I'm playing them with home theater. What am I connecting them with? Do they have a center? I don't think Marten makes center channels, right? They don't make subwoofers. They don't make surrounds. Or, I don't even know if they make I guess they do probably make bookshelves, that you technically use for surround. But then think about it. If the damn L&R cost $300,000, if they did have a center, what would that cost to have a matching center? What would it cost to have matching surrounds, right? Like, who's spending $800,000 or $600,000 on a 5.1 system? Like, what are we talking about here, right? That's a consideration. Because when I was looking at, okay, what speakers I wanted to get, I'm thinking, well, do they even make a matching center? What would it cost to build a entire, like that factored in? If you're going for just 2-channel, if you're Jay and just trying to get these ultimate 2-channel speakers, you're not thinking about stuff like that. That doesn't matter. Whatever budget you have, if I had $50,000 to say I'm building a system with 11 speakers, that's very different to say I have $50,000 I'm just putting to my 2 different speakers, right? Like, right? That's a very different thing. So, for me, that obviously was a consideration and why I wouldn't look at that. Also, size-wise, again, aesthetics is not just the look; it's the size, it's the weight. These speakers are nice and heavy. I don't want a 300-pound speaker though. Like, I can never move it, right? It's going to be so unwieldy to move it. I see Jay struggling all the time, right? With trying to just even reposition his stuff in this room. Again, that's what he does. This is, he's kind of making a living off this stuff now. But I don't want to have to do that. If I want to just notch them over, I should be able to manage them. That's important to me. Size-wise, this room can't fit 8-foot speakers. What are we doing, right? Like, I mean, it technically can, but it's just too big for this space. And this is a pretty big space. Never mind, some smaller spaces. I don't need all that, So there's stuff like that, right? Just think about use case. Similarly, on the other side, the JTRs, I'm sure they sound big and huge. I know for a fact that they don't sound as accurate and as realistic for music as my speakers do, obviously as the Martens would, right? And that's something that what I was going for here, why I didn't just go all in on home theater, because I did want to get a good music experience, a audiophile kind of music experience, right? But I'm not going all in on that, because if I was going all in on that, there's other considerations that I would make, right? Even something like the fact that my processor selection, right? Like I using the Anthem, because the Anthem AVM90 especially is probably the best compromise of a really, really high-end, one of the best home theater processors you can have, but also with a good focus on 2-channel. It's not going to match a dedicated $50,000 MSB or Precision or, whatever, Griffin preamp that, you might see on J Channel or other, like, obviously it's not going to do anything close to that. But for most, for my purposes and most people, it's going to be able to deliver enough. It's going to be able to deliver a good enough experience where it's a really, truly, world-class 2-channel experience. The AVM90 DACs are pretty much the flagship DACs, right, that you can get. It's just in a home theater processor instead of a dedicated 2-channel processor, which makes a difference. I mean, when you're focusing in on, for dedicated 2-channel, Anthem makes a dedicated 2-channel preamp, like the STR preamp. I'm well aware of that. But again, thinking about the holistic my space, I have a certain clean look I was going for, a certain clean aesthetic. I have this nice 3x3 Oslo, stand, and it can fit. I have 9 shelves. Right now, all 9 shelves are active. If I get another preamp, now I have 2 processors, one for 2-channel, one for home theater. People can do that. I know people can do that. People do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want this mess of stuff. One thing about Jay, I mean, again, God bless him, but you can see, I'm showing the pictures of, just a screenshot of his room. It's like, not many people can just have all of this equipment coming out from the wall, just sitting there. He has tons and tons of stuff, multiple processors and DACs and streamers and CD. I mean, come on. I'm not trying to do all that. I got my CD, I got a CD player, I got a Blu-ray player, disc player, I got my game console, I got my power conditioner, I got, got my amps. I mean, I'm good. This is what I want. This is what I like. So I don't want to have another processor in addition to my home theater processor. I need a home theater processor to do the home theater, to do 4 out of 5 things, right? So for 2-channel, it's like, okay, do I get another one of those? So everything I tried to do was something that I can leverage for both. I did upgrade the speaker wires because it makes a difference. It makes a hell of a difference, actually. But it's something that can be leveraged for both home theater and for music. I don't want to separate stuff because of this hybrid nature of my system, right? So that's just, different considerations of why I would land. Again, they probably wouldn't land where I landed, right? I've never seen Jay gaming in that room, right? So it's just different use cases, guys. So, but hopefully that's useful to you to just kind of see and understand why and how you can get to such different places when you have different focuses. Again, equally amazing systems, but very, very different systems, very, very different types of equipment, types of speakers, types of, processing and stuff like that for different purposes to get there. Me, I kind of came in the middle. I settled kind of in between. And for that purposes, again, I am extremely happy. I think that for my purposes, I'm pretty much at my end game. Even though those 2 systems, for example, will clearly outclass mine, in an apples to apples comparison for what they do. But from this space as well, and from my taste, I can't really do too much better than this, guys, right? That's all for now, man. Let me know what you think, what your thoughts are. What is your focus? Home theater, music, what are you looking at? Again, shout out Jay, shout out Youthman if you ever happen to watch this. I'm not, trying to put your stuff out there or, do anything behind your back. I'm just talking about some public videos you guys had. Inspired me to kind of think about this question of what is the ultimate system? Where do you land? How does that look, right? So hopefully you guys enjoyed this content. Until next time, True Techno Gamer, signing off.